deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian, man. Come on. People deluded, I'm back again. They've been crying out for Alex to come back, and he's back now. People, make sure you're following his YouTube channel. Just cleared over 70k. He was late, but we'll let that slide. You know, pay his late fine, man. How you doing, my friend? Good morning to you and everyone in the chat.
I didn't realize it was a stream. Sorry. My bad.
No, because for once I was actually prepared. I thought, you know what, let's just make it a stream, man, rather than a pre-recorded video, man. I can't lie, we've have a lot to discuss, from Raheem Sterling to our transfer market to the midfield, and I'm sure you would have seen last night. In fact, indirectly, you picked the best time to actually come on the stream, because unfortunately yesterday, Mr. Martin Odegaard got an injury, man. I've offered my thoughts. What's your thoughts, man? It's a madness.
Yes. Yeah, it's oh Christ.
Not pretty at all.
It's obviously it's really frustrating. I think there's two aspects to this. I went on James B's channel last night and spoke about it a little bit, and I think really what I feel is there's two feelings. There's like the real,
let us have them all, man.
There's the real frustration as a fan. Like, we don't need to go to solutions every single time. Like, it's okay to be a fan and, you know, occasionally just be like, this is really, really annoying. But also there are the solutions, I think, which we can maybe get into. I can't take this away from, and I think the real frustration is I can't take this away from. There's probably two conversations. One about squad building and so maybe whether we did enough during the summer.
Oh, we're gonna get onto that. Don't worry.
Yeah, which maybe we could have a conversation about, and whether this is, you know, we've left ourselves short, which I understand, but I don't really agree with. And secondly, about how many minutes players are playing anyway, and the risk of injury just goes up, and the spreading these, you know, these top players thin in these sorts of games where, you know, FIFA and UEFA are trying to squeeze in more and more games every single year, Club World Cups and expanded Champions Leagues, and, you know, making more competitive friendly since, is it 2018, the Nations League, and, you know, all this sort of stuff. So there's just a wider pool of games that this can happen in, and you're spreading the top players thin. That's what you're doing. So, you know, I think that those are the two things there, and then the solutions. So maybe we can go into all of those.
We're going to get into them, but you touched on it, man. Player welfare is actually something that, you know, for me, the UEFA and the governing bodies of this world have to take seriously. Let's be honest, they don't care. I hate to refer to football as this, but it is a business. It is an entertainment product. Considering we just had the Euros, and obviously now essentially Martin Odegaard, injuries can strike at any time, as we saw with Mikel Merino. But considering that this is essentially a pointless friendly, it is very frustrating. And for me, I don't want to see Odegaard injured, but it dispels this myth that Arsenal haven't had injuries, that we've had a clear run, etc. We'll definitely get onto squad building, but you mentioned solutions. At the end of the day, you know, we can have our fan stuff, we can scream, we can shout. It is the worst possible news, definitely ahead of the North London derby, with Declan Rice and Moreno also not being able to play in that, essentially our first choice midfield three. So what's your solutions? Where do we go about that, and how do you feel about our midfield going into that very game on Sunday, man?
Yeah, it's a concern. And also we have our I would say arguably our top three choice midfield out, and I would also say we've got a decent chance. Like, you know, so that tells us something. Like,
I agree.
We're not putting out absolute dross. We're putting out a substandard team, one that we wouldn't want to put out. But when your top three midfielders are out, and you can still go, let's say Partey, Havertz, maybe Trossard as a right eight, or maybe you put Waneri in, or we'll discuss that in a second. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but, you know, that tells us, you know, the squad depth is okay, you know, and then we can come to whether we should have done more. I think in terms of my solution, I look at Spurs and I go, okay, they're a team who we thrived against on the transition last season. I think we probably as fans are going to expect and going to go into that game expecting Arsenal to have the, you know, 70% field tilt and all, you know, 7,000 touches.
Love a field tilt.
Going to be on the edge of their box and, you know, all that sort of stuff, right? And, you know, yeah, we'd like to do that. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I think we're going to have to play a bit more of a transitional game. At which point I'd be looking at like the likes of Sterling. I'd be looking at the likes of Martinelli, and then sort of how you complement that, how you do that. I'm interested. I think I would love Arteta to spring a bit of a surprise. I think with these opportunities, I think Ange will have been prepping for a Havertz, a Havertz, Odegaard party in midfield up to now without Marino and Rice. I think that's what he would have been doing because Arteta usually defers to seniority. That's like his, he's not predictable in terms of the dynamics of the team, but in terms of the personnel of the team, he almost always defers to seniority. I would love him to go, all right, Ange, you won't have prepped for this. Here's Trossard false nine and Waneri. Here's Havertz
Timber.
on the right wing and Saka at a right eight, and and Jesus up top for parts of the game, or Timber in the midfield, exactly. So I would love that because I feel there's an opportunity to do that and to do something interesting. If we're talking my personal choice,
That's what we want, man, as well.
don't think I'd want Waneri just because it feels huge. I think he should play a part of it. But I would prefer something like Jesus at false nine, Sterling at left wing, maybe Trossard and Havertz to get them all centrally as the kind of the combination players. I think Jesus, Trossard, and Havertz is a kind of central three. Arteta's spoken about working with them before. Transition in Sterling and Saka on the wings, and then Partey and who would that be? Partey and Jorginho deep? No. Yeah, Partey and Havertz dropping in and hopefully is more of a sort of pivot player, which isn't ideal, but there's never going to be an ideal situation. So that's probably what I do.
You're not looking at Jorginho in any way.
Not in this
You
game.
mentioned seniority.
Well, I think Arteta will play Jorginho, but there's what I'd do and what he'd do. I just look at the way Spurs jump and how jumpy they are in terms of their press, in terms of their centre backs, and I want to use the transition and I want to use the combination players we have to play around them. I think Jorginho could get ran over. We saw it against Spurs last season. I think they could target him. So could Partey, so could Havertz, but you have to take your risks, right? And so, for me, I'd be looking to hit the wide areas early, try and use the transitions, and try and get the likes of Porro and Udogie up 1v1 because I think that's where we can hurt them.
I think you're bang on the money, and you keep saying transitions, and I think you're spot on because where you look at the goals we scored last season, they was on the transition. We scored an own goal from a corner. Obviously, Kai Havertz's lovely assist for Saka. I agree with a point you said a few moments ago in that, with the most respect, but disrespect to Spurs, because I have to remain somewhat impartial. Regardless of the team we put out there, of course, there's going to be a drop off, not just in our fluidity and how we link defense to midfield, also defensively. Odegaard's our second man in defense, in defense, give or take, with Kai Havertz. So I think we lose a lot. I think our fluidity isn't going to quite be there, and I just think it comes down to a dogfight. I'll be brutally honest, man. Yes, me and you, we love to talk tactically and things. I just think I don't want to sound like Raheem, but I think it's a game of who wants it more. I am happy I'm not Mikel Arteta. My midfield, I don't know, because do you get rid of the 10/8.5 and play a flat midfield? Do you put a tigerish Timber in there and bring Calafiori again? Another one that's actually nursing an injury allegedly. I'm not too sure. For my bias, it would have been Kai Havertz before this Odegaard stuff, and it's a bit weird because we don't actually know whether Kai Havertz is going to play a 9 in the 8.5 or actually in the kind of 10. So I'm probably leaning towards probably Thomas Partey, Kai Havertz. A bit of me wants to just throw Timber in there because he's tigerish, because he's basically playing central midfield anyways. And do you start to look at Zinchenko, bro? Like, do you start to even consider him? I know, but do you consider him? I agree with what you said about Ethan. I don't think there's ever an ideal time to play a young player. And at the end of the day, if you're mixing it with these footballers, you're good enough. Essentially, there's never an ideal time to play them. And I'm sure he might be in a positive way naive because he's getting to make a start in a game of this magnitude. But he is going to have to be coached through the game. And he's a young player. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be switched on 24/7. So, yeah, it's a tough one, man. But talk to me about Zinni, because there's a lot of people that are saying 10s and 8s for Zinchenko. And if you never get a chance now, you're never going to, are you?
Yeah, I can't see it happening, to be honest, just because of the off-ball work. That's my concern. I think if you're in the final third and you're giving him a lot of touches, maybe that works as a left 8. I still haven't seen him in the final third doing that sort of stuff other than for Ukraine. And so for Arsenal, I haven't seen that. But for me, no. It's a nice idea on paper, but I think when you look at the role, specifically the left 8 in our team, it's not working for me
You're gonna
personally.
have to help out wide as well, which Zinchenko
Yeah,
goes to sleep as well, man.
I can't see that, to be honest. If you think about, at the moment he'd be replacing Declan Rice, and he can't do Declan Rice's role. So not for me. The one I would look at maybe more is the right 8. But then I look at all the stuff that, because he can drop out the block, he's left-footed, maybe he can combine in the same way Martin Odegaard does. But if you look at the way Odegaard leads the press, if you look at the kind of the triggers and the timings of that, I don't know how I feel about Zinchenko doing that. And also Odegaard again does loads of great stuff on the ball, and the combinations and stuff would just be disrupted through that. So yeah, I think it's about finding different solutions. And there's a reason we have all these versatile players, right? Like there's a reason we sign every single player. And Mikel goes, well, they're really versatile and they can play a number of positions for games like this, to try and I think Arteta will try and keep as much. Yeah, there's what I'd do. And I think Arteta will try and keep everything as equal as possible, which might mean something like a Trossard at right 8. And then a Havertz, a left 8. I don't really know. I can't really predict it, but I think he'll try and keep the dynamics fairly similar. I think, which is a shame, because I think we have an opportunity to be what's the word, to launch a surprise. I think.
I feel a bit of sympathy for Mikel Arteta, purely because, obviously Odegaard's now the talking point. We know Mikel Moreno got the freak injury. Declan Rice got that silly suspension against Brighton. I'm sure he just about found the solution for that. And then obviously there's been another spring in the works where Odegaard's concerned. Does it concern you about our fluidity? We know we're not going to have our first choice midfield. Again, I think that might mean Sterling not starting. For me, Sterling probably would have started this game, because we're moving more pieces to the puzzle. But then you look at our midfield, you look at potentially Gabriel Jesus starting, or him and Sterling starting. Have they got 90 minutes in them? Have they got it in them to press for 90 minutes? So how do you feel about the landscape about our team beyond the obvious going into Sunday's clash then, man?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if we look around, there's a couple of concerns, isn't there? Jesus, Calafiori, I think was there a problem with Timber?
No, I don't think so, But he's nursing a big knock.
Yeah. So
you've got Tommy Asu allegedly making progress. Whether he's able to play a part, I don't know.
Yeah, Tommy Asu. Yeah, so we've got a growing list. So who's out then? So we've got Rice, Marino. We still don't know about Odegaard, but let's assume
we hope for Odegaard. We have hope, but let's just rule him out now. So that's 3. Tommy Asu, I don't think he'll play a part. Calafiori, I actually think he'll be fit, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Boy.
Let's say doubts. So that's 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who I feel like we're missing someone. Jesus, has said he's fit for Northern Derby, but again, you don't want to rush him back. So that's 6. So that's Jesus. And Sterling also, in terms of players who are, fit and firing, ready to go. Sterling's been out of training and stuff, and I'm not saying he might be fine, but that is, I think Arteta will always tends to exercise caution. So you could even argue.
Does he even have that though?
So, well, he might
even have that luxury, bro.
He might not have the luxury. Do you know what I mean? So, and that's that's a separate conversation. But I think there's 6 or 7 doubts. And you could argue all of those are certainly first team squad members. First team sort of on the bench. Yeah, it's a concern. I mean, do you want to have a conversation about Kieran Tierney's house? I suppose. Forgot them. Do you want to have did we do enough in the summer conversation? Because,
man, let's get into that. I was gearing it up for that, because I'm not gonna lie to you. Me and you are accused of being Mikel Arteta apologists at times. I've got a lot of sympathies for Mikel Arteta. I don't know what we tried to do or didn't do in the market. Essentially it's Arteta's job to have the same recruitment but not get over the line, right? So if I praise you for how you've built the squad, how you've assembled the squad, we all spoke about how we've got a small squad, the manager himself. I have a few luxuries I can give our supporting fans, players at Arsenal, because they don't make the decisions. But where it comes to injuries, Mikel Arteta and Edu specifically, unfortunately, I don't have any sympathy, because injuries can strike at any time. I personally don't believe we've got the squad depth. I know the talk in the summer was centered around a striker and inside forward, definitely where I'm concerned, a central midfielder or 2. But when you got away from that chat, us fans did say, what's going on with Odegaard? Now, everyone's a genius in hindsight. I am being a bit unfair with what I'm about to say, but being devil's advocate, Mr. Fabio Vieira returned to Portugal. Emil Smith-Rowe went to Fulham. Those are 2 options that could have played in the 10, let alone the 8. Boy, and of course you can't predict injuries, but did we do enough in the summer, bro? Like, more games, smaller squad, we're surely being means tested.
Yeah, I struggle with this one, because the two names you mentioned, Smith Rowe and Vieira, would they have started?
I mean, they might have, I don't know for Fabio, maybe Smith Rowe.
They
We ain't
might
got
have.
many other bodies.
I
Being
look at
devil's
maybe
advocate.
Smith Rowe would have, but away at Spurs, even with this, let's even with the doubts, I won't call it an injury crisis. Even with the doubts that we have, the 3 first choice midfielders out, would Vieira have started? I honestly, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I think look, would I start Vieira is a different conversation, but would Arteta start him? I don't know. So that tells you all you need to know about Vieira. And when 30 something million's on the table for Smith Rowe, now the question is, should we let them both go? Okay, well that's a separate conversation. Look, I think it leads here. Ultimately, if you look at every single top club, they have players who, if they were to be out, it's going to hurt them. When City lose Rodri, it's going to hurt them. When City lose De Bruyne, it's going to hurt them. When Liverpool lose Mo Salah, it hurts them. There is no Salah replacement. There is no De Bruyne replacement. We say, where's our backup for Odegaard? We're asking for that, but there's no Jude Bellingham replacement. That these players, like if you have a player that good, Real Madrid could not in a million years go and sign a left winger right now. Kvaratskhelia, maybe he'd do it because it's Madrid. But my point is, in the sense of a player who wants to come and play, that's not going to happen. You have to invest in proper assets. So, £100 million asset in Martin Odegaard, you get him at 30 million, you hope he gets there. He's got there, I think. And you say, okay, well, if you're out, we find different solutions. Now, we've been lucky up to this point. We haven't had to look at these different solutions. I would argue that maybe Arteta, this isn't the perfect solution to see these different solutions. Sorry, perfect situation to see these different
solutions. At a terrible time, man. Last comment, I was fast, man.
Exactly. If you just have Odegaard out, you can adapt accordingly. But we're going to see this Saturday, is it? Sunday. We're going to see this Sunday what the solution is. And it might be something different. We haven't seen Odegaard's played basically every single game since he got here. I can't actually remember many games he's even gone out.
He had a little concussion at some point last season, but he generally isn't ever present. And that's why I asked you, because I agree with what you're saying. Again, ideal world, we've got a 20-man squad. We've got replacement for Saka of the same suitable standard. For me, with Odegaard, though, is that you lose a player that is vital to all phases of play. He helps defend, he links the attack, he leads the press, the metrics are all there, he's ever present. Again, in terms of fluidity, owing to his other teammates not being available, we've kind of been kicked in the teeth even more now. And this is where, okay, if not necessarily a like-for-like replacement, Arteta's a smart man. You have to know at some point injuries can strike and you have a solution. What that solution is, I don't know. You'd imagine Sterling, Trossard, even Gabriel Jesus, they could all play in that midfield 10 of sorts. I want to say 10, but we all know it's an 8.5. So there has to be a solution, man. Does he go to a 3 at the back? Does he, like you say, just spring something and say, do you know what, forget all of that, it's a flat midfield 3? Because I do think the Spurs game, honestly, bro, it's a fight, essentially. It doesn't have to be pretty. It could be so ugly, it's beautiful. Just get the 3 points. But do you have sympathy for these injuries for Mikel Arteta and Edu specifically?
Of course. But I'd be curious what people would say to this, which is essentially, okay, what do Liverpool do when Salah's out? Which, and what does City do when De Bruyne is out? They find different solutions, and then they normally go, well, Eze was available on the market. Okay, say we signed Eze. Is Eze, if everyone's fit, playing 38 league games? No, he's not.
Probably not.
Because he's not playing our left-sided winger, because that's not how that plays. It's someone who's stuck in lane 5 and he wants to come inside, and his best qualities come centrally facing you up,
driving with the ball. Yeah.
And Mikel Arteta does not play in that way, in terms of with his 2/8s being these creative attacking Xavi Iniesta types. It's not who he is. He's going to have someone who's a bit more sort of 6'8", a 6, and then 8 in terms of Odegaard. He wants dual winners, he wants runners, he wants stamina in his midfield, he wants solidity and security, and that's what's got us to the point
we're at. That going into Sunday's game, man.
Well, exactly, but it happens. If we hadn't had a ridiculous refereeing decision, we would be here saying, okay, maybe you do Havertz in the 8, or you do and Jesus at 9. And you're having a completely different conversation. It just feels really hard because all 3 of them are out in a freak, in a freak situation. I suppose what my point is, there will be people watching this going, no, absolute rubbish. We should have done more in the summer. Absolutely fine. What should we have done? Like, genuinely, what should we have done that would have got us to the quality level of being able to replace Odegaard and having, 80-90% of what he does? And they'll go, Eze, well, he wouldn't have played otherwise. So why would Eze move to Arsenal? Okay, Desiree
For
Doué.
60 mil, that has to be paid up front.
Exactly. For someone who wants to sit on the bench, that's not going to happen. And also, this doesn't happen at any top club. All the top clubs go, our best player is out. You can't replace that. Let's find a different solution.
Solutions.
And I think that would have been Kai Havertz. I think that would have been, maybe he's going to move Saka inside. I don't know. That could be interesting. Saka and Sterling on the right hand side. Okay, who do Barca have to replace Lamine Yamal? There's no one. They have to find a different solution. They have to do something different. They have to play differently. And that's what happens with the very, very best players. That's what happens.
And like you said there, that's why I have no sympathy for Mikel Arteta, because again, it's easy for me to sit here and say as a fan, depth, etc. Of course, I've got, luxuries for any manager who suffers injuries, but you're a smart man. You had to have considered that this could happen at any point this season. He's dealt with a lot of injuries as our manager from the point of coming into the club. So he's a smart man. He has to have considered it. He has to have known this. So just find the solution. It's weird for me, because it's a weird one in that I'm worried, but I'm not worried. Of course, I don't want to hear injuries. I'd love Odegaard as a person, for your health to be fit, let alone what you're going to do for my football club. I still think there's enough to beat Spurs, whether we can see out the game, whether it kills our fluidity, whether me and you are sitting here and talking about little micro and macro tactical stuff. I hear all of that, but I still think there's enough to get over the line. Obviously, we've had a bit of a freak sort of incidents where for a variety of reasons, essentially our three players, it's a bit weird because our three first choice potential midfielders with Mikel coming into the club are injured and Partey's fit, and that's what scares me. Partey, please wrap yourself in cotton wool, man. What do you think of the window as a whole then? Because big up yourself, Inner Circle. I mean, he's been getting at me. I've described the window for me as a 5/6 out of 10. He said something the window was a 6 out of 10 or higher. We said what happens if we get injuries. I do think we didn't do amazing with sales, but I think there was more on the upside with sales. We did all right. At the end of the day, we brought in some great first team additions. I don't think the depth has been married enough. I know there's more players that Arteta trusts, but ultimately I wanted to come out of this window personally as a fan thinking we've got enough depth, because Mikel Arteta keeps speaking about that. We've got more games, less players, and our squad is being means tested. But where are you at with the window on the whole then?
Yep. I put it at like something like a 6 out of 10, maybe something like that. 6 or 6.5, 7, something like that. I think my main feeling coming out the window was I don't know. I don't understand, to be honest, because I think this all comes back to, and I said this in the video, it all comes back to basically whether you felt the right player was out there. And fans are going to feel that. And I felt that. I felt the right player was out there. I felt the right player was out there in Victor Osimhen. I felt the right player was out there in Rafa Leao, and I felt Nico Williams were all great options. Just quickly on this Eze thing. If you think he starts for Arsenal, please explain to me the 4-4-2 mid block. Is he going to be better than a Marino sat in a 4-4-2 mid block? Please explain to me how he rotates out wide, low touch to support Martinelli coming inside. Is that getting the best out of Eze? Please explain to me why he is he going to be the one on the last line crashing the box in the way Declan Rice does? That's not getting the best out of Eze. Please explain.
I think you can do a lot of that stuff, but I think you're back on the money, man.
Pointless. It's pointless. Why give Eze 10 touches a game? You waste the talent. You absolutely.
I think they got some nibbles there, man, Alex, man. I think they're looking for
it's just stupid. It's just stupid. If you give him the Odegaard role, maybe we could have a conversation, but Odegaard isn't coming out of it. And on the left-hand side, he's in lane 5. He's a touchline winger. You're not asking Eze to be a touchline winger. It's pointless. It's like putting Messi at centre-back. It's pointless. Anyway, nibble. I just...
Go ahead, man.
That got me. Yeah, I didn't understand it, to be honest, and I didn't. Yeah, I felt that the right players were out there, but obviously the club didn't feel that. I'd like to know why, but we don't know. And I feel a little bit confused. I think ultimately this is going to be one of those things we have to look back on and say, okay, what is because there's all sorts of conversations go around in niche spaces about, okay, was it PSR? Are we waiting for City's, the conclusion of City's investigation? Was it just the wrong player, whatever, the wrong time? I'm confused because it feels like we're trying to find this massive player, this massive kind of ceiling raising forward.
It's like trying to find the end of the rainbow, man.
every single window, and it just never seems to materialize. But fine, you know, if we look back in 2 years and it's like, oh yeah, we didn't move for that big forward in summer 24 because City were about to go get relegated, so we wanted to go get that player and we felt
That would
whatever.
be amazing.
Fine, you know, but at the moment I don't get it. I can't really. Calafiori is a brilliant addition to an already brilliant midfield. Defense. I think Marino, while not being the absolute top quality, will facilitate for others so much better than we think. And I think he's going to be a big hit at Arsenal. We're going to see him in that sort of Xhaka way. He's going to the one-touch stuff around the corner, all that's the facilitation for Martinelli, getting Declan Rice deeper, all that sort of stuff. I think it's going to be huge. And then the forward areas, if we were waiting for something, then Sterling's fine. So it's a fine window. I think it can almost only be judged in like a year, whether it was like, you know, in the same way that sort of, I think in 2022, that 2022 window, that's a good window in terms of Jesus and Zinchenko got us challenging, but did that set us up for the long term? Probably not. So you go back and you go, I'm going to mark that down a little bit just because those players aren't like.
But everyone's a genius in hindsight, to be fair.
Well, yeah, but of course. So I can say what I think now, but I think it will reveal itself in time.
It's a mixed bag for me, man. It really is a mixed bag. As I said, I think we brought in some quality additions. I agree with your point in that Mikel Moreno. I know in a day and age where you're coming off the previous summer where you signed Declan Rice for 100 million, that's a lot of fanfare. I know Moreno won't be seen as a sexy signing. I think he's a quality addition, especially in the next 12, 18 months where you're looking at long-term Partey and Jorginho solutions. I think to have potentially Declan Rice, Moreno, and two other midfielders of a suitable standard. Me and you have spoken. I know it was naive to expect, but if we assume the squad was the same from how it ended, I still think there's a case of two central midfielders. But I think that's naive on my part to assume you'd have two midfielders in addition to who stayed at the club. I do think it's a missed opportunity. I do praise the club for not necessarily spending for the sake of it. We're going away from what we used to do, but it just feels like we're trying to find a mystery box of a player. I think the striker thing is where I kind of cut the club a lot of luxuries, despite the fact of me obviously wanting a number 9. It seems like Sesko was the only one we kind of quote unquote went after. If you read the article in The Athletic, that didn't happen for whatever reason. It feels like Gyökeres and Osimhen were probably more fan and tabloid led than anything. As you said, the additions we've brought in have been good, but I do think it was about the squad. I do think Arteta's got more players he's trusted, and I think we've raised the floor, but I don't think we've quite raised the ceiling. How do you question the ambition of those above Mikel Arteta? Because I'm sure, you know, Arteta sounds quite peed off about the level of the squad. Do you think Edu has necessarily got his job over the line? And do you think this is a missed opportunity? Because again, there is PSR, but the Cronkies, some would say, do you know what, if they inject certain monies, that's where you get the Isaacs of this world, the Gamaras is. I don't want to trigger you, but Mr. Eze, etc., etc.
Triggered. I think ultimately we have to come at this. Look, the Cronkies, I think there was an article back in Athletic in like February. It was basically saying Arsenal want to move to a more self-sustaining model. And that
we needed to do that with sales, man. We haven't done well sales for a minute.
City have a self-sustaining model. Like they didn't for a long time because they're investing to get to a point,
and now they're at their level
point where you can start going, right, there's a £90 million sale and we make a whatever, you know, purchase over here.
And look at what Chelsea doing, selling hotels.
Yeah, exactly. You get yourself into that situation. We have to understand the financial landscape of things, moving to the increasing PSR restrictions, the UEFA squad cost rules, like lots of things are changing. So any conversation has to hold on to those and accept that is a concern. Equally, I still think we could have invested this summer from everything I've read about our PSR position, but that's fine. You know, again, we have to.
It was more us wanting to look after stuff rather than we're treading a tightrope, which I'm not critiquing really and truly.
Yeah, and the Cronkies and Edu have to look after our long-term future. So if this keeps us, you know, and people aren't going to like this, but if this keeps us competing for a title for the next 10 years rather than the next 2 years and then we drop off a cliff, fine. Do you know what I mean? I'm genuinely okay with it. So as long as it's always for the long-term future of Arsenal and there is ambition behind it, it's not spending because we're not going to spend anymore, but not spending because we want to keep within the lines. Then we want to go big next summer. I am, as I say, after the fact, I'd be okay with it, even if in the moment I'm like, God's sake. I do think that, I don't see why from 2018 to now they would spend the money they'd spend, and then just as it's almost feels like it's about to happen, they go, nah.
A lot of foreplay. We're getting to the stage of penetration. We're flirting with it, like flirting with it, man. That's how I describe our ambitions for the title. We're flirting with it, like we're finally flirting with it, and it just feels like if we just calm down a bit, play our cards right, we might be able to get some pussy. If I'm honest with you, but like I'll be absolutely honest, that's what it feels like where Arsenal the title challenge is concerned. And I do have to play devil's advocate though, because obviously as fans, it's not FIFA, we're not privy to all the information. But it does feel like, to a degree, those above Mikel Arteta, and indirectly I do, they might sit there and go, do you know what? We are improving, we are competing, we are just ticking over. And I am wary of that because I know Arteta won't rest on his laurels, but, you know, success is never linear. You just don't go up there. The last 2 years, maybe even 3 years, you know, really and truly have been just up there. There might be some normalization. Obviously, everybody's looking at what Mr. Slot and Liverpool are doing. As you mentioned, Man City or Man City. But then when you break it down, as I said, for me, the window would be a 5 out of 10. I recognize you had Copa America, you had Euros, players that you thought were available might not, players that you wanted might not want to come. There's a lot of stuff, but that's not necessarily unique to Arsenal. And I do feel while the club, you know, Calafiori was a first choice target, Mikel Moreno was a first choice target. You got that over the line. I do think there was some good sales. You know me, I'm a big fan of Emil Smith Rowe. End of the day, you got good money there. You definitely got great money for Nketiah. You got more than Man United got for Jadon Sancho. What player is held in high regard? Ramsdale, I don't agree with the fee, because if I just say, for me, he's a better player leaving Arsenal than when he signed, but we all know why that fee is that fee. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. If I was to scrutinize it and take a bit out of context, you signed a goalkeeper that's cup tied and you've missed a number of first choice targets. The one striker you went after over Sesko, it came out on The Athletic and said, you know, he wanted to have his future resolved before the Euros. We didn't necessarily want to do that. And you've signed Raheem Sterling, which you've come out and said that wasn't something we planned to do. Even if I go back to the Nico Williams thing, that's great. Go after Nico Williams. And I don't know Nico Williams, but it appears that his heart looks set on Barcelona. If anything, you might want to stay at Bilbao. So you're essentially trying to entice a girl that is leaving you on blue tick. So I'm not sure. I do think it's been a decent window. Huh? I mean, I know the feeling as well, man. I can't sit here and say I don't, but it's a mixed bag. And ultimately, the only things that I think it's a mixed bag for us this season, in that the things that would give me confidence is that we've been improving. I know people look at new signings as the be all and end all, but you have to improve your existing quality. I do like the first team additions, but there is a lot of reasons to be cautious because we started the window. And again, the club ain't coming out and saying this, but we see the articles. We're looking for players with X factor. There's mystery Germans. And now look at what we're talking about, man. But like, where are you at with Raheem Sterling signing as well? Because surely that's a panic buy or a panic loan.
You can spin it both ways, couldn't you? You could say it's a panic buy, and you know Arsenal left it late, and they clearly didn't get off, you know, their first team target. Same with Neto, right? You can spin it that way, or you can say it's a brilliant late stage, you know, switch around. Well done, Arsenal, for being alert to the market. You know, the Sterling situation materialized.
How much do you believe that?
Has worked in before. Well, no, but I'm making the argument both. My point is, you can make the
I don't think you're wrong.
Do you know what I mean? So you could spin it both ways. I think it's all, as always, it's somewhere in the middle. Look, as I say, I think the right players are on the market, and I think Arsenal have the capacity to spend. But ultimately, I'm not in the club. I don't know what they think of the players.
You're not a decision maker.
I'm not the decision maker. They might have early doors just gone, Osman, not for us, because Mikel met him in Puerto Rico on holiday 2 years ago and he spat in his face. We don't know. Like, we don't know. We actually don't know. So, like, let's stop pretending that we know. We don't know why the clubs don't want the players. We don't know why they can't get them. We don't know why they didn't move for them. We're adding on information. We also don't know the PSR position. We don't know the long-term financial plan, right? We can guess and we can make educated guesses, and that's what we're trying to do. And I just think the Sterling thing makes sense in some aspects because you're going, okay, it doesn't stop us doing something next summer. It's a decent, he's still in his prime. I think the physical drop-off thing is not a concern for me. I think he's physically fine. The question mark
Careful, he's 29, man. He's going to get a walking stick.
his decision making in the final third, yeah, he's done. His decision making in the final third has always been the concern. Is that absolutely, yeah, that's going to get us over the line versus City this season? No, I'm not convinced it will. So as I say, that's why I think, because you maybe are in the same position as me. I wish we'd done something else in the forward areas this summer. But again, to then fully make that argument, I have to say things that I don't know. I don't know what our PSR position is. I don't know whether we felt the right player was on the market. I then zoom out and go, well, it feels like lots of summers up to now with whoever, Calvert-Lewin, Isak, Vlahovic, Mudryk, all, it feels like we have all these sort of big plans.
Some names I forgot. Rafinha at a point. Neto.
Rafinha, yeah. And we've still in the forward areas only signed Jesus, Trossard, and not even Havertz because he was signed as a midfielder. So yeah, something's going on there, and I don't understand it. And at that point, I'd be willing to go. I think we need to get off our asses a little bit, but that's a wider conversation, not necessarily about this summer. So yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated.
It is complicated. For me personally, centre mid was addressed. I would have loved to. As I said earlier, that's been a bit greedy. We were told we wanted a left back. I'm not necessarily against the left back, much less Calafiori, because of what you saw at Bologna, what he did at the Euros to enhance his reputation on top of what we've got already. You know me, I would have loved the striker, whether it would have been Isaac, Osimhen. I think when you look at how Osimhen kind of conducts himself and always tearing into his manager on social media, I think Mikel Arteta just forget all of that, much less, financially. Yeah. I was prepared to cut the club a bit of slack with the striker thing, just because I know, I always say this, but I know Kai Havertz is not Firmino, right? But you could have kept Havertz doing what he's doing. If you've got Saka and you've got another one putting up numbers, that would have been on the left and the right. That would have been great. And Raheem Sterling, at the end of the day, for me, what goes against Sterling is probably the drop off of our market, in that we started well, deals took a bit too long, found ourselves kind of scrambling. Of course, it is a last minute deal. It is a kind of better than nothing sort of thing with Sterling. I think those kind of things go against Sterling before you talk about him as a player. People will sit there and say Chelsea reject, yada, yada, yada. I'd say what I like about Sterling is obviously he's worked with Mikel Arteta before. He's probably got that fire in his belly just as a person. He's been alienated from Chelsea. He, at the end of the day, whatever you have to say about this individual, we want to be a team that wins Prems. He's won a couple of those. He's been in the game since 16, 17. So there's a lot of transferables he could give to the players. I just hope he's ready, fit and firing. And you could argue, as much as I like Trossard and Martinelli, Martinelli's not hitting it off. I don't want to get at Trossard for one start against Brighton, but he is somewhat a super sub. You could argue Sterling isn't assured a first team spot at this team, but is he really less of an option than, the two on the left-hand side? It's open season, surely.
He can still contribute, absolutely. And I also, just in the context of the Sterling thing, I just want to point out that, so last summer, the top 10 signings were, number 10 was Szoboszlai for 70 million. Then it's 75 million Havertz. Chris and Nkunku, who came at that point. Neymar went for 90 million euros. Josko Gvardiol went for 90 million euros. Rando Kolo Muani, Harry Kane, Rice, Bellingham. There's so much movement. And then this summer, I think the highest market value would have been Mbappe, but that was a free transfer. Victor Osimhen was a loan transfer. The most expensive transfer was Julian Alvarez. And then the next one after that, any guesses?
No.
Was here it says Douglas Luiz. On
oh shit, yeah. Another one that we used to be linked with.
Yeah, so the market wasn't particularly alive this summer in terms of the fees that were going. So that tells us something was going on for me around the world, and I think that's down to UEFA squad cost rules. I think people are prepping for something. I really do feel we're downplaying this City thing. I don't think we're projecting forward properly. If City get done for what they're accused of being done for, that's it.
They're beating the case, man.
Well, maybe they are, but the people that I see online who talk about it are absolutely dead cert convinced that at least some of those things will get done. And it's not just one, it's not one.
You're throwing shit at a wall, some's going to stick. Hope so.
I think Everton's was one charge and they got 10 points deduction. There's 115. So if City go down 2 leagues or whatever it might be, they'll be back because they're City and they have an unbelievable infrastructure. And I think part of that is probably to prepare for this. But if you think about the likes of what's the ripple effect of not only the players that will leave City, but the players who will leave the clubs that, say you sign Phil Foden. Okay, what happens to Camavinga? What happens to Valverde? All those sorts of things at Madrid. Okay, what happens to Erling Haaland? What happens to Jack Grealish? All these players who are still, still great players. The ripple effect of that is huge, absolutely huge.
And the thing with me with the City stuff is, listen, if you've done wrong, you've done wrong, innit? I think there's a wider discussion, I'm not accusing any club, but I don't think there's a single footballing club that has their hands clean. Now, there's rules. Some people are milking them. I just think logically, if you're Man City and you've got all this money to spend, you've done all of this, in the same way they're going to give you a case, you're going to throw the best money at the best lawyers available to somewhat fight that case, if I'm honest. And I think they'll get away with it, man. I hope to be wrong, man, but Yeah, it's a techie one, man. What do you think of Raheem Sterling specifically from his time working under Mikel Arteta and what that could mean for the football club?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's absolutely a world where Sterling bangs for us. I just, right now
How confident are you out of 10 on that,
yeah,
man? I have to
yeah,
scrutinize you.
yeah, probably 7. I don't think
I
he'll
think that's fair.
absolutely. I don't think he'll. But ultimately, Mikel knows this guy inside and out. Mikel knows how to work with him. I think Sterling's qualities have always been his pace, his ball carrying in the final third is always a question. If you put him in more when those rumors about Darwin Núñez were coming out and people were like laughing about that. Like I'm not saying I want Darwin Núñez, but I always feel with those sorts of talents, you look at them and you go, there's a massive issue there. I wonder what, I'm not saying you signed Darwin Núñez, but I wonder what happens when you put someone who's clearly got a load of talent in a very structured system. You basically reduce their options. You give them a predictable environment. You say, right, okay, Raheem Sterling, we want you to carry 15 yards. And when you get here, what's going to happen is this. Martinelli's there, Sterling's there, Saka's there, Havertz is going to make that run, and then Rice is going to crash the box, and Mourinho's going to be here. Make your decision early, but when you cross the halfway line, you need to know what you're about to do. If we put him in a very, very unpredictable environment, he has the quality to slalom, to beat players, to stand players up, to go both sides. I really do feel there's a quality, a ball carrying quality that we don't necessarily have, and he'll also score some goals. I think we just need to give him a more predictable environment. If you watch where he was at Chelsea, it was Mudryk on the left, and it was Cole Palmer, and it was Jackson, and
There has to be a Chelsea tax because everyone flopped as well.
It was this and this. I think someone in the comments said it earlier. Okay, so he was great at at Liverpool and City, and then just forgot how to kick a ball at Chelsea. No, you can't uncouple that totally. And he wasn't great at Chelsea, right? But you can't uncouple it totally.
Still one of their top goal scorers in the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. What was going on sort of for them. So yeah, look, he's not going to change our world in terms of a forward that I would have loved, but is he going to contribute? Is he going to help to deal with the minute share for Saka? Is he going to hopefully give Martinelli a bit of a push? Yes. So there is net positive here. Again, we can hold on to the net positive and also at the same time say, I probably would have wanted some more.
I think Sterling sums up our summer away from, the obvious. He sums up our broader thing in that it's a mixed bag. There's some reasons to be positive. There's some reasons to be negative. For beyond the obvious with Sterling, I'll be honest, I just want you to run in behind. I want you to take your players on 1v1. I want you to run in behind. And I want you to just hang in the back post and score some tap-ins. Now, I know Sterling is going to miss a bunch of chances. I think he is a high-volume player. And I know he's a fan. He's a player that, admittedly, I love Sterling as a person, but he's an easy player to slander when he's at other clubs. So I've got a lot of apologies, Sterling. I would love for you to make me eat my words. The only thing I would stay with Raheem Sterling is that, and it's a bit irrelevant, this is just my thoughts as a fan, in that essentially we're developing a player that's going to be sold by Chelsea, if I'm honest with you. Again, you never know. The manager might still be at the club and say sorry in a year's time owing to Sterling's form. But I know if I'm Raheem Sterling, which I'm not, if I'm banished from training, if I'm stripped of my shirt, if you say I can't train with the first team, if you say I can't even use the facilities that you're paying me 300 grand on the week, I am not returning. Where I give Arsenal some credit is that, fair enough, it's not a long-term signing. It's not the first choice, as you said, for once, and again, we're not in the negotiating room, but Edu's always scrutinized of his deals. I don't agree with it's a low risk and a risk-free, because I don't think there's anything like that in football. But where you look at the finances around that, Chelsea are essentially paying us to play Sterling. So let's just hope it's a great thing, man. Talk to me about Declan Rice, because, I think you would have seen it as well. He's come out and we've both done videos on it. You inspired, man. Big up yourself. People have said it, there's issues with Declan Rice. Of course, for me, he's never looked fully fit. But what have you made of him this season?
Yeah, it's not the best start. He's been okay, I think. But that doesn't exist in football. He's either unbelievable or terrible. Okay. I think he said himself, I think there's a fitness issue there. I think we have to look at his minutes over the last couple of seasons. We have to manage it. We have to be careful with it. I think we can manage it when Mourinho's back, but right now we can't. I think, for me, I think I said in my video, I see him deeper long term. It's not saying he can't step up the pitch and carry and do that stuff, but I just think his best. I basically just think his absolute world class qualities can't shine further up the pitch, and they do
just
shine.
a six-step thing, yeah.
Yeah. So like he can do, like, his off ball quality is great, and he can crush the box well, and he can stop counterattacks and stuff further up the pitch. Fine. But in terms of the quality on the ball that we forget Declan Rice has, the carries that he has, the breaking up play, the interceptions, the ball progression, like we forget how good he is.
His bread and butter is the 6.
He's not aesthetically particularly pleasing in that sense sometimes. So I think we forget that. And then we can support him with Marino is my position. So yeah, it's just going to take some time. I mean, what it does to me is it kind of promotes the idea, like, but what Bukayo Saka is doing, considering the amount he's basically played the same amount of football, I think even more than Rice over the last year or two. That tells you that the
Man's incredible, man.
Hit the ground running. It's absolutely unbelievable. But yeah, look, players have poor games, but also he's not even been that poor. He's just been okay.
You know our fans. Our fans, Alex. Okay. You can't go for me, and I'm not saying it. I'm not accusing anyone, but football's a funny old game. A week's a long time. So when you've got 38 weeks, it's crazy. You can't go from. I don't agree that he's better than Rodri, but a lot of our fans would speaking with chess. He's the best in his role. He's better than Rodri. You can't go from that to now criticizing him now and saying this, that, and the third. Now, away from healthy criticism, I'm more focusing and leveraging the extreme examples. And the one thing I would say is, I don't expect our team, and this isn't to find excuses, we're not going to be fit and firing 3-4 games into a season. If we're having these conversations 10, 15 games into the season, then there's comments. And when you look around it, not to find excuses, you could argue Odegaard isn't at his best. Partey isn't at his best. Everybody, unless your name for me is David Raya to a degree, Kai Havertz, Saka by his own standards isn't to his best, but he's significantly above everybody. And give or take California and Timber according to their minutes, you're not doing what you should be doing, really and truly. I agree with what you're saying about, for me, his bread and butter as a 6. I do think we get too hung up on formations. I do think you will see Moreno and Declan Rice kind of be multifunctional throughout 90 minutes. One will be deeper, one will be further forward. I think that will be a good partnership when we do get to see it, mate, in terms of duels and all of that. I just wonder if both of them, and obviously Moreno's significantly a better passer than Rice, I just wonder if there's enough guy in midfield. Really, I'm still not going to stop the agenda of wanting a kind of Santi Cazorla replacement, but that's for another thing. That I'm cool with Declan Rice, man. It's just a shame that in a game of this magnitude you haven't got him, although some fans will say you gave away a penalty in the last North London derby, so it might be best that we don't see you, really and truly. So it's a techie one, man. It is a techie one. Where do you think the game's won and lost against Spurs? Because we look at their high line, we can see the transition, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think we've got to allow them to have the ball a little bit, to be honest. I think we might have to get a little bit more comfortable with just giving them the ball and asking them to break us down, because they won't. They won't break us down.
We defend properly. Last time we had 2 silly mistakes, really. If we don't do that, we're right.
If we can defend our box properly, we sit in our block and stuff, I actually think we'll be fine. And then we hit them on the transition. But I don't think Arteta will be. I think he will be pragmatic. I think he's actually learned that over the last season. I remember his comments after City. He said something about not being, well, I can't remember exactly what his comments were, but basically he was a bit critical of how he approached that 4-1 game against City in 22-23. And he was like, you can't do that. And he kind of said something about it and was like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. So I think he's kind of learned you have to be a bit more pragmatic at times. And I think he will.
Great man learns from his mistakes.
Yeah. I think he has. I think he'll be more pragmatic. I think as long as we don't try and turn this into a basketball game, we'll be fine. But solid use of the transition, being careful, and breaking on teams when it feels right. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine. We forget set pieces and Saka's individual quality and corner. We forget
high line.
Yeah,
they're gonna get in a gunfight with that high line. And
Spurs can do stuff to beat themselves. So I will be fine.
And I think that's the thing, Alex, man. In fact, I think it will be like a basketball match, as you said. I think it will be like that. I think Spurs want to take it to that. I don't think their form's been the best. I think they'll smell blood because of our injuries. Obviously, they're playing with 12 men. I won't quite say Arsenal are licking their wounds because, again, we need to calm down. It is only 3 games into the season. But the sentiment around our club with the referee, with dropping points to Brighton, with several players not being involved, with the ramifications if we lose this and going and playing City and Atalanta and a congested fixture schedule, I think they'll leverage that. But I agree with you, man. I think if we be difficult to break breakdown, we can do a thing. I want to see us get at the high line. And that's why, if everybody's fit, I think I would love to be sitting here with you and purely just talking about, do you go with Sterling and Martinelli? I think Martinelli starts because I think there'll be too many players that might not be 100% fit. I'm not nervous. I'm respectful to Spurs. I think it could go either way. I think Spurs remind me to a slight degree of our early days under Mikel Arteta. And what I mean by that is, I've watched the first, I'll give them the Everton game. Everton are in trouble. Like, they're not really that good. But you look at the Leicester game, you look at the Newcastle game, and literally with Spurs, it's a tale of two halves, in my opinion. Against Leicester, they should have killed it in the first half. They didn't. You saw the result. Newcastle, they should have been, they should have killed that game in the second half. They didn't. You saw what time it was. Obviously, with Maddison, with Puro, they've got quality. I will be looking at the midfield, as cliche as it is, because they will have Basuma, they will have Sarr, they will have Maddison in the pockets. Again, I think obviously with Odegaard and his quality, we'll focus on him in the final third, but he puts in a defensive shift. So our press and all of that kind of stuff, I don't know if that will invite Spurs to be a bit more expansive. We all know that Postecoglou is brave/naive, so it will be an interesting one, man. It will be an interesting one to see. Before I let you get out of here, though, I want to go over certain headlines with yourself, man. And the first thing I want to see is, do you agree with Julian Nagelsmann's comments about, Kai Havertz can be world class in many positions?
Yeah, I think there's a real conviction in Havertz's play at the minute.
World class really in every position, though. In many positions, world class in many positions.
I don't know if that's fully the quote. What did he say?
I'll read it. He said, on Kai, and for those of you who haven't been listening as well, he said, Kai has made a big leap forward in the last 2 years. He has the potential to be world-class in many positions. He runs an incredible amount and has become very clever. He sometimes lacks a bit of finishing luck. The co-captaincy is good for him. Big him up on that, by the way. He's a smart person, very reflective. He's very modest. I hope he continues to believe in himself. Big him up for the confidence, but world-class in many positions.
Yeah, so my read
I'd love him to be like Muller in his prime.
My read of that is he's not saying he is simultaneously going to be world-class as a centre-forward and a right winger and a right central midfielder and a left-back or whatever he's going to play him. My read is he's approaching world-class in the position he's in. But if you stuck him elsewhere, I also agree he would learn that position, because I think it's about his intelligence.
He's an intelligent lad, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think he can. And same with Saka. I just think he can learn it. If you look at the way he
pick him up for his confidence, man.
Yeah, it's a confidence thing and a conviction thing. And I'm seeing a lot more conviction in his actions. I think it's good at some point, if he continues the sample of finishing and goals and assists that he's got, we're gonna have a different conversation. Right now, would I bet my house that Havertz is gonna keep up that run? No, maybe that's not fair. There'll be some people watching this who say that's not fair. He's since the end of last season or since February or whatever it is.
No, I agree with that.
I just want to feel a bit more sure, but that's just me. But if he keeps going and he puts up a year's worth of sample of centre forward of getting great numbers, then we have to have a conversation, right?
I think he's doing everything he can, man. Like, he's picked up where he left off in the second half of last season. For me, the big thing is confidence. Respectfully to Kai, first half of last season, you look like a charity case. We've come a long way from the charity pens against Bournemouth. We've come a long way from the midfield position against Fulham. You're doing your thing, Kai. You're one of the first names on the team sheet. I won't forget your run in the second half of last season against Spurs and Chelsea. And I do think you're right. I think right now, Kai Havertz, I know we probably brought him in to be a midfielder. We stumbled upon this thing up front and he looks good. And I don't know if you watched the Rio Ferdinand interview, but when whether he's able to get it's another thing. He spoke about wanting to get 20 goals. I love the confidence. I agree in short with what Nagelsmann has said about the luck, because I do think he's been unlucky, but at the same time, I can't really say Kai hasn't been clinical, but I wouldn't describe him as clinical. He's not a natural born striker. And I think it's harsh on Kai because he's done his job this season. He did his job against Brighton, but he did. And it happens, but you did have chances to score again, but Bukayo Saka the same. I just think Kai could be a versatile player. He could be a first choice striker option. If just we had another blockbuster number 9 would be amazing. And actually, I'm starting to believe you don't necessarily need another number 9 as much as I would love a talisman that raises the system. You could argue you could have had a Giroud-like figure in this team that could have just got 10 goals, but those 10 goals could have been turned in draws into victory and defeats into draws, ultimately more points on the board. And where would we have been last season, man? We've gone over the Declan Rice thing. I believe Team News and Ticks has spoken, and you mentioned Osimhen earlier. He said Arsenal's interest in Victor Osimhen waned at the beginning of the year due to concerns over his attitude and high wage demands. Osimhen's public spat with the Nigerian national team manager on Instagram also put paid to any interest from the club, and he since then criticized Napoli on a live stream. So where you at with that? Because it kind of feels we're in the Ivan Toney situation with that.
Yeah. I mean, like, wasn't there some? Didn't Napoli put out some like racist TikTok of him? To be fair, like, so I don't know how much like love lost there is there.
True that. True that.
Yeah, I don't know honestly. Like, I think look, ultimately it sounds like the club are really keen on getting great characters, and that's fine. But I think what happens is you do need a balance, and I think sometimes we're a little bit nice. I think if we think about players going on international duty, feels like Rice will always report for international duty. Saka will, Odegaard will. They're going to do the right thing. They're not going to.
And everyone else is pulling out. Like they're not ready to be a dad.
But it's also on the field as well, in terms of, they're not going to try and buy fouls. They're not going to, tactical foul people. And I'd like to see a little bit more of that. So I think we need someone a bit nastier in our team. And you don't want every single player, but someone like a Bruno, someone like a Victor Osimhen, just who's a bit more of a bit
I'm
more
proud of you, man. I've been saying this on our live streams. Welcome to the dark side. Pardon my language. We need bastards, man. You look at any title winning team or whatever. Yeah, Real Madrid got them. The Invincibles had them. City got them. Look at Rodri. Rodri is the biggest villain probably in the Premier League.
Bro, like Carl Walker, like Ruben Diaz a little bit. Like
and who's really nasty in our team? What, Ben White, Kai Havertz? I'm not criticizing them because I do think they have fight, but Kai Havertz, Benjamin White.
Yeah.
Who else is kind of nasty? I think Saka's becoming a bit evil, but yeah, you're right on that, man.
Yeah, need a bit of bite. So I think some people go, "Oh, we don't want to sign him because he's going to upset our club culture." Mate, if one player upsets our club culture, we are done.
We're
one
fickle,
player. Yeah. that tells me we don't have a good club culture.
Yeah, the foundation that Arteta built must be massively overstated and overrated in that regard. Team News and Ticks also spoke about Anthony Gordon. I don't know how you feel on that, but it's easier said than done. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I definitely wouldn't be against it. He said Arsenal inquired about Anthony Gordon late in the summer transfer window, but Newcastle didn't want to lose the player, nor did they have the financial need many clubs had expected from them. Gordon would have been interested in a potential move. He was also linked with Liverpool. What do you feel on that?
Yeah, I like Gordon. I need to watch more of him, to be honest. But from what I see, obviously a bit of a runner and a bit of a sort of a very direct player. That's a
nasty as well.
That's a Martinelli replacement.
Hey, careful on the ball.
Well, it is. Is Anthony Gordon
careful.
Of course he is.
I've avoided not speaking about him with you because
everything we need to know. That tells us everything we need to know.
Give him up, man. And again, this is something I would love. This is something that arouses my imagination. Easier said than done. He's wearing the number 14. Team News and Tick said as well. By no means, by the way, people, am I saying these guys do or don't know what they're talking about? I don't know. But he has said, I've been told Alexander Isak will be very, very high on Arsenal's list. He's definitely someone I expect them to revisit next summer. If Newcastle don't get Europe, you'd imagine he'd be angling for a move. Talk to me about Isak. I imagine I know where you're going to go with it.
This, for me, is dependent on Havertz's season. I think Havertz and Isak can play together. But I wonder whether we worry about disrupting Havertz. If he's giving us numbers, why go and invest? I'd much rather invest in a wide player.
What's these numbers?
If Havertz is giving us the numbers he's given us over the last 12, 15 games, whatever the sample is, it's like, I don't know what it is. It's like 17 games and 17 goals.
All right, give me an end of season statistic to be devil's advocate.
Yeah.
If Havertz is 20 goals, you leave Isak alone.
If Havertz gives us 30 GA, let's say, 21 goals, 9 assists or something, then I'd be much more interested in a wide player than a number 9, personally.
I'm with you in the sense of, as I said at the start, I would have cut the club a lot of luxury, forget the striker. I understand it's a delicate market if you got the Nico Williams, etc. We see when it comes to Isak, that is my exception to the rule. If there's a scope to get Isak, and I do think there's a reality where people, obviously, if Havertz is a starter, he's a starter, but people just assume that Havertz isn't going to get game time. Again, I am probably over exaggerating, but if you was to sign Isak today, and Havertz is doing what he's doing, you're not losing your spot in that team. You are holding on to that shirt. And I do want to see what we do. I do like Gyökeres. I am of the belief now, okay, you're not going to get Isak or any of them guys. Do you get somebody that is a good rotationary option, a Giroud kind of ilk? Team News and Ticks also said, Arsenal explored deals for both Rafinha and Onana this summer. However, both wanted to be guaranteed starters, something Arsenal could not offer. Where are you at with those two and that?
I really like Rafinha. If he was willing
to me wrong, to be fair,
and be behind, I said it on a stream like a couple of months ago. Like I think players don't just talent doesn't just wash away in the rain. Like it is still there.
Remember that when you talk about Martinelli, but go on.
It's about putting it in the right environment. Well, that's the question: is Martinelli going to be in the right environment? But yeah, I think I like Rafinha. I like his decision making on transitions. I think he's a good player. Yeah, I like him. Again, if he's coming in and going, I need Saka's slot, no chance. But
Forget about it.
But if he was willing to say, yeah, I'll come, I'll take a bit of a wage cut, and then I'll come and sort of put my tail between my legs, come back to the Premier League, and work my way in, I would have taken him. But if he's coming in saying I want to be the star of the team, I don't think that's right.
Quickly going back to Sterling before I get on to my last point, yeah. Do you think there's a reality we could sign him permanently? I don't want to talk on a player that ain't kicked the ball yet, but I'm sure you've been asked that.
Look, stranger things have happened. Do you know what I mean? Stranger things have happened, and like I'm not saying. As I sit here today on the 10th of September, there's probably a 5% chance of it happening. Public perception of players changes like that.
Odegaard shows that.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just see how he does. I'm not saying no. I doubt it, to be honest, from here, especially because of his age profile. But, if he says, I'm willing to take a wage cut and I'm happy to play behind, you're going to sign someone next summer and I'm happy to be your sort of your wing backup, let's put it that way, then fine.
I'm with you with that. Now, again, obviously, bro, we've got centre mid issues. Rabiot's a free agent.
Rabiot.
I'm asking you. I don't want Rabiot, but I have a duty to ask. Are you having him in theory?
And we're not getting Vieira back off loan, and we're not re-signing Smith Rowe.
You're not having Rabiot at all. If there was a reality,
although he is a bit nasty, from what I hear,
he is. His mum as well.
Got a bit of bite about him. So I think his mum's his agent, and every time I see him, it's always his mum going, "He should be playing for Real Madrid."
Yeah, you're a bit too old for your mum to be fighting your battles, and I don't know if it's on screen, but 220k per week. Not that I'm a finance man. For me, that's not going to make sense for a 29-year-old for Arsenal. Bearing in mind, the high earners we've got, and he's not going to be a bona fide starter. Really, it's a bit weird though that you look at him, Martial, couple of players that, regardless what you think about them, are struggling and still free agents. Essentially, we'd have to see. I know I said last thing, but I think this is a good kind of thing and a good way to end it, man. I'll let you answer this. You big up, is it Utrick? Forgive me for your mispronunciation. He said, captain Saka, Saliba, Havertz and Rice playing time needs to be highly managed this season. Take them off the field when we're winning comfortably. What do you think? I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can be more conscious of that. The thing I will say is the club have like a billion different data metrics on their players, so they know better than us. However, I think it was obvious that, I just think we need to be able to manage minutes better. And I think the two there are Saliba, and I think with Timbers returning three there. Timbers returning Calafiori, I think we'll be able to manage his minutes better. Arteta's literally directly referenced that with Calafiori. I think with
Saka, Gabriel and Ben White as well, to age your point.
Yeah, true. With Saka, I think Sterling massively helps that, and with Rice, I think Mourinho helps that. So I think we'll see an uptick in that this season.
Last question, because you said it there with Sterling. Now, just when I think we're done with the Sterling stuff, for me, I have this bias that I know Sterling is versatile, can play all over the place, but I just have this bias that I'm going to see him on the left. Obviously, he's going to deputise for Saka. What do you make of him on the right-hand side? Because for me, I'm not a fan of it. I can't lie to you. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, well, he's a different option. He's strong-footed on the right, so he can get to the wing, whip something in. I think against the lower-level teams, he's nice because he can dribble into the box, but he's not getting past anyone in a sort of top six left back as a winger. So on the right hand side, but I think when he can cut inside on the left, he can get through defenses because he can access different spaces. I like it as a different option. I think against certain teams it might work, but I think against the top level teams, I don't think we're seeing Sterling on the right. No.
I'm with you with that, man. Alex, it's a shame that, we've done this content where the sentiment around our club is a bit cloudy, but it's always amazing to be here with you. I can't imagine you're not subscribed, people. All you need to do is click the title. The man's just cleared 70k subs. Support the movement, get him to 100k. What content have you got to come? He's put out a great piece on Declan Rice a few days ago, maybe even yesterday. What pieces have you got to come, man? No doubt there must be something about midfield. There has to be. You're missing a trick if there's not.
Yeah, we'll probably do something about Spurs. I don't know whether preview content does particularly well, but anyway, we'll have a thing. I'm definitely going to do something. Oh yeah, I did something about Rice. We'll definitely discuss it we do a podcast TDK Live, which you can check out on a Thursday evening. Talk about it on Canon. I don't know, on the main channel. We'll see.
People, the guy's got like 3 channels. Just go support them all. Go and have a browse, because I can't imagine, you've seen all the content. So yeah, man, we've spoken about everything in relation to Arsenal. I'm sure you lot agree and disagree with what we've had to say. So let me know in the comments when the video's done. Big up you lot for tuning in. Let me leave Alex and you lot to enjoy your morning or what's left of it. And hopefully on Sunday, regardless of who's out there, we get a result. But on that note, everyone, peace.